Good morning. What a rich fool can teach us about evangelism. Luke 12:13 through 21 is not always a paragraph I read with unbelievers as I'm bringing them to a knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But it is a paragraph that I could read with almost everyone with confidence, knowing that there will be some practical application here. It's a great passage and certainly fits the mindset that we see uh, so much everywhere around us here in Silicon Valley. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And he said to him, "Who made me a judge or an arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on guard against all covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you. And the things that you have prepared, where will they be?' So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God." I actually think this guy gets a bad rap. And every time I preach on this, almost every time, I talk about his virtues. And you probably won't hear about this rich fool's virtues in most sermons, but I think that we have to, because his virtues play well into the mentality that exists and is so prevalent here. And they're not all bad. Virtues are good things. This man worked hard. Jesus says flat out, the land of a rich man produced plentifully. That didn't just happen. There was a lot of really hard work that played into that. About the only thing in my yard that pops up all by itself is weeds. But if I want something productive, I've got to put some work into it. This man worked hard over life. He had strategic planning. His land produced an abundance. Didn't happen by accident. God blessed him, but most farmers who experience a good harvest have done some hard work. We say God helps those who help themselves. It's the law of sowing and reaping, 2 Corinthians 9:6. The point is this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. In the words of Jim Rohn, the soil says, "Don't bring me your need, bring me your seed." If this man's land produced in great abundance, he probably knew what hard work and strategic planning were. We live in a time in which a lot of people do not appreciate the value of hard work. They want something for nothing. Sacrifice and toil are not in their personal lexicon. Some employees have work ethic issues. Some service industry people do not understand the concept of good customer service. You've experienced that sometimes. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 and 11 says, "For even when we were with you, we gave you this command: if anyone is not willing to work, neither let him eat." In other words, do not be an enabler of slothfulness. Proverbs 16:26 is representative of the Bible's teaching in this area. A worker's appetite works for him, for his hunger urges him on. Ecclesiastes 9:10, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going. Martin Luther King once said, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare poetry. But this man not only worked hard, again, he was a strategic planner, he was a goal setter. Nothing is wrong with taking inventory, preparing for the future, or setting proactive goals for return on investment. And that's what this man must have done. Careful planning is essential to a well-coordinated, well-structured life. If we fail, if we plan to fail, or we do plan to fail if we fail to plan. Napoleon Hill once said, cherish your visions and your dreams. They are the children of your soul, the blueprints of your ultimate achievements. Or Jim Rohn, never begin the day until it is finished on paper. You plan before you work hard. You can work hard in a haphazard, unplanned way and not accomplish anything or go in 1,000 different directions, but your strategic planning will focus those energies in a direction that is goal-oriented and that produces results. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Sometimes we have to replace inadequate barns for bigger ones. If we measure future needs based on realistic growth projections rather than current resources, we'll be in a much better position to capitalize on the opportunities presented to us in the future. And one thing that the elders here are talking with our preachers all across the world about right now is setting goals and engaging in strategic planning for the future of the Lord's work wherever you might be. Because if you don't plan, you're not going to accomplish anything of note. If a business or an organization or even a church fails to expand when the trend calls for it, tremendous opportunities go to waste. Even a church must have forward thinking. I'm not saying throw caution to the wind. Sometimes there's a time to scale back, but we need to plan in anything worthwhile in life. This man incorporated good principles of success in his life. You know, if we were to summarize a lot of this in terms of personal development seminars that people go to often here, one could say that he was a model of personal development. He worked hard, he strategically planned, he understood success and incorporated those principles into his life, became very wealthy. But was he really a success? Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame says the pursuit of wealth is a wonderful thing. And there is a sense in which I will not disagree with that. I am at my core a free enterprise, free market capitalist at heart. You know where that began in Western civilization, right? In the 9th century in northern Italy, with monks who were concerned about the future of their monasteries, incorporating what they understood to be biblical principles to sound economic practice. So often, what happens in this life is a rejection of longstanding principles that are based more on biblical principles than people realize. This book, The Victory of Reason, How Christianity Led to Freedom, Capitalism, and Western Success, develops the history of some things we take for granted in Western civilization that are now under attack by so many people. And my contention is the general populace is totally clueless on the extent to which Christianity or biblical principles contributed to the success of Western civilization. But in attacking some of those things, there is an inextricable tie to the Christian origins of some of those very things. And I believe there are a lot of people who are clueless about those interconnections. I don't believe that we should ever be down on hard work, strategic planning, principles of success, or personal development. None of those things were this man's problem. His problem was a focus on all of these things while forgetting the most important thing. And so he also had some vices. He had a materialistic focus. It's interesting to me that this parable, the catalyst for this parable, is a question that comes up from the crowd. And get the setting with me. In chapter 12, verse 1 of Luke, in the meantime, Luke says, when so many thousands of the people had gathered together that they were trampling one another, you have so many thousands of people gathered together here. And in a previous lesson, I made the point that Jesus goes in and out from the inner circle to the outer periphery, back and forth. And this is someone in the crowd on the outskirts. He's not one of the inner disciples, he's someone in the crowd. And in front of thousands of people, he brings to Jesus a personal inheritance issue between himself and his brother. Oh, if I can only get Jesus to address this in front of thousands of people, I could finally get my piece of the pie here. Can you imagine doing that to begin with? I've got a problem with my brother, my sister, so we got to issue. But Jesus can settle this right here, right now, in front of all these people. Let's just bring the matter to Jesus. I can't imagine doing that. This man had to be so fixated on this issue that it was eating him alive. I've got to have what's coming to me or else, and I'll do anything, bring it to Jesus, even in front of thousands of people here. Jesus refused to take the bait. Who made me a judge or an arbitrator over you? I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. But I'll tell you what the problem here is. If this is eating you alive, beware and guard your heart against all covetousness, for a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. You're letting the wrong thing eat you alive. Let me tell you a parable about a rich man who had the same problem. He was a hard worker. He was a strategic planner. He was into personal development and principles of success. But his focus was entirely materialistic. The whole catalyst was this financial dispute between brothers. Mark Twain once defined civilization as a limitless multiplication of unnecessary necessities. In other words, a bunch of stuff that no one really needs. Many people think covetousness is a problem only for the rich and famous, while most of us still have a lifestyle that is the envy of the world. Greed is a problem for everybody, potentially. Sidney Harris said, the more you have to live for, the less you need to live on. Those who make acquisition their goal never have enough. Ecclesiastes says it this way, chapter 5, verse 10, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. So how would you respond to this rich man's dilemma? No, no place to adequately restore all my crops. The person who says, I wish I had that problem, may be masking his own greed. Selfish perspective. Floyd Thompson of Southern California. I do this often when I preach from this as well. Many of you have heard this before. Instead of reading the entire parable, he just reads the personal pronouns, or used to. It reads like this: I, my, my, I, my. This man had a problem. So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. It's all about me, myself, and I. Then when he finally achieves this, he's going to live a life of leisure. It's okay to take a vacation. I really believe that we all need downtime to re-energize our batteries and to recharge ourselves, to enjoy a respite from a long season of work, or even to retire from professional work life altogether when we reach a certain age. But I want you to listen to this carefully. It's never okay to be lazy or to take a vacation from serving God, ever. No one squeezed more out of his time on this earth than Jesus did. And he says in John 9, 4 and 5, we must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. Vance Havner, who was a Baptist preacher, said when recreation or recreation gets ahead of recreation, then God's house has become a den of thieves. This man was living for the moment, not for eternity. And none of us operates on an unlimited budget of time. This man miscalculated how much time he had left. If you knew that you had a year to live, or you knew that you had 5 years to live, or you knew that you had a week to live, or you knew that you had one day to live, how would you spend that allotment of time? Any differently than you would otherwise? You think this man would have been thinking about tearing down his barns and building greater ones if he knew that his soul would be required that night? Moses said way back in Psalm 90, verse 10, I like the old King James version of this verse. The days of our years are 70, or if by reason of strength, 80. Yet is there pride but labor and sorrow, for it is soon gone and we fly away. James says it this way in James chapter 4, beginning with verse 13. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. For whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. Finally, his priorities were not God-centered. He gave God low priority. God was not at the top of his agenda, but at the bottom of his agenda. What does it mean to be godly? For starters, it means the Lord God is the hub from which all the spokes of the wheel radiate, the center of everything else. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. This man was a fool, a rich fool, but a fool. He was a fool. So if you're ever going to teach this to lost men and women, connect the dots, dot the I's, cross the T's. Don't forget to make these points. Number one, don't sweat the small stuff. Tearing down barns and building bigger ones, small stuff. In fact, in the bigger scheme of things, it really is. When I was growing up, my favorite paragraph in the New Testament for anxiety related issues was not Matthew 6, but Luke 12. Beginning with verse 22, he said to his disciples, and this is what he says right after he talks about the rich fool. Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, nor about the body, what you will put on. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens, they neither toil nor sow nor reap, and they have neither storehouse nor barn. I'm going to stop there. They don't have a barn. They don't have too small of a barn, so they need to build a bigger barn. They don't have a barn. And yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than birds? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single cubit to his lifespan? If then you are not able to do a small thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass, which is alive in the field today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? And do not seek what you are able to eat or what to drink, nor to be worried. For all the nations of the world seek after these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, seek his kingdom, and all these things will be added to you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions, give to the needy, provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and not moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. But I get ahead. And we've got to have 5 incomes so we can put a down payment on the house. And we've got to have this. We've got to have these amount of funds in our retirement portfolio, and we've got to inch ahead a little bit more, and we've got to prioritize, and we got to. It's all about how much money you're making and what kind of job you can get, and that is the lie of the Silicon Valley. When all is said and done, don't sweat the small stuff. God will take care of you. Put his kingdom first and let him take care of the rest. And secondly, get ready to face God. Because like this rich fool, you don't know when your time is coming, when your name is called. Verse 35 beginning, stay ready and dressed for action. Keep your lamps burning. Be like men who are waiting for their master to come home from the wedding feast, so that they may open the door to him at once when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds awake when he comes. Truly, I say to you, he will dress himself for service, have them recline at table. He will come and serve them. If he comes in the second watch or in the third and finds them awake, blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left the house to be broken into. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. And then Peter blurts out, Lord, are you telling this parable for us? Or Lord said, who is then is the faithful and wise manager, whom his master will set over his household to give them their portion of food at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly, I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that servant says to himself, my master is delayed in coming, begins to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and drink and get drunk, the master of the servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and in an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him in with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will, but did not get ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. But the one who did not know and did what deserved a beating will receive a light beating. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom they entrusted much, they will demand the more. And the point of this is not if you have less opportunity, less resources, that you can take solace in the light beating. The lesson here is if you're richly blessed with opportunities to know all of this and you don't get ready, woe is you. What kind of opportunity do you think that this man had? God was not even on his radar screen. And when he made all these big plans for the future, God was totally crowded out. And the Lord said, this night your soul is required. Then whose will be all these things? Serve God now. Do not wait to prioritize what is supremely important. And if you need to obey the gospel, now would be a good time, not tomorrow or the day after or the day after that. Now. Get right with God now. Because you know that every single one in this room might have about as much time and not know it as this rich man had. And if this night the Lord were to call you home or away from this life, would you be ready? I want you to think about that as we sing a song to one another. Let's rise and sing.